This week there was a significant change in the Yellowstone Super Volcano that has scientists scrambling. Will this sleeping giant eventually cause the events of the sixth seal of Revelation? If there's one event that could bring about the type of things foretold in the book of Revelation, it's the Yellowstone Super Volcano. This week's disturbing changes and the link to the sixth seal are what we're talking about today, and we're starting right now. Yellowstone Park is the second most visited national park in the United States, and the one attraction that brings the most visitors is the supervolcano that lies beneath the park, the most famous supervolcano in the whole world. What really put this volcano on the map was the discovery in 2013 by Dr. James Farrell that it actually was 2.5 times larger than what scientists had previously thought big enough that an eruption would cause worldwide impacts. And in a sort of strange fascination type of way, it is now drawing millions to the park, once only noted for its beauty, to the site of what might be the sixth seal. Before we talk about what happened this week in the park that has scientists scrambling, let's give a shout out to Rick Knight, a member of our community, who keeps us up to date on lots of things and brought this to my attention. Let's look at why we keep referring to the sixth seal of Revelation also, a sign that appears in numerous books of the Bible: Isaiah, Joel, Matthew, Mark, Acts, Revelation, and a number of other books. Now here's what Revelation says about that event. And I looked when he, and that's Jesus, broke the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun became as black as sackcloth made of hair, and the whole moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its unripe figs when shaken by a great wind. The sky was split apart like a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. Then the kings of the earth, and the eminent people, and the commanders, and the wealthy, and the strong, and every slave and free person hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and the rocks, "Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" So let's take apart this passage piece by piece and look at what will be in store for the earth when this happens. And then we'll go back and look at what happened this week. If we start at the beginning of the passage, it says, when he broke the sixth seal, there was a great earthquake. As soon as the Son of God breaks the sixth seal, the first thing that happens is an earthquake. Not just any earthquake, but a great one. In 2018 alone, there were over 14,000 earthquakes worldwide, and researchers and scientists have suggested that the world could be preparing for some kind of mega tremor that could split continents. And Revelation tells us the sixth seal events begin with an earthquake, one that moves, quote, every mountain and island from its place. Sounds like the splitting of continents to me. Scientists also tell us a megaquake would cause a chain reaction of volcanic eruptions to happen at the same time. Volcanoes like the Yellowstone Super Volcano and other similar supervolcanoes spewing their ash and lava into the sky all at the same time, blocking out the sun. And this is also exactly what Revelation seems to tell us happens next. And the sun became as black as sackcloth made of hair, and the whole moon became like blood. The sky will be darkened like night by thick clouds. And this is exactly what the prophets tell us will happen. Quote, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness. Joel 2:2. Quote, that day is a day of anger, a day of trouble and distress, a day of destruction and desolation, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness. Zephaniah 1:15. And, quote, from the brightness before him, and that's Jesus, past his thick clouds, hailstones and coals of fire. Psalm 18:12. What is the source of these clouds? Obviously God. But does he use volcanoes to fuel them? Well, perhaps. And the final verse we read from Psalms speaks of hailstones and coals of fire. Is this the next thing in Revelation's 6th seal is speaking of? I think so. And the stars of the sky fell to earth, as a fig tree drops its unripe figs when shaken by a great wind. When the supervolcano erupts, it would shoot rock and dirt miles into the atmosphere. And when these pieces would fall back to Earth, these small spheroids would glow red hot, looking like thousands of tiny meteors entering the atmosphere. And how would people react to these things? Exactly as Revelation tells us they would. Then the kings of the earth and the eminent people and the commanders and the wealthy and the strong and every slave and free person hid themselves in caves and among the rocks on the mountains. Luke tells us there will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars, and on earth distress among nations, in perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves, people fainting from fear and the expectation of the things coming upon the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Luke adds that there will be tsunamis, the roaring of the seas and waves, exactly what you'd expect from worldwide earthquakes and volcanoes. And when things don't seem like they could get any worse, Jesus tells his disciples this encouraging thing. But when these things begin to take place, straighten up and lift your heads. Don't you be the ones hiding in the caves, in other words, because your redemption is drawing near. The unsaved will hide, but Jesus wants us, his redeemed, to look up for him. And that is exactly what we see next in Revelation 6. Look at what those hiding have to say. Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? This is the return of Jesus, coming on the clouds. Ever wonder why he comes on the clouds? They may be these clouds caused by volcanoes. We had looked at Psalm 18 before in this video, but let's look at it again in more detail because it really describes all these same events. Then the earth shook and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains were trembling and were shaken because he was angry. See, that is the earthquake that comes first that we described. Smoke went up out of his nostrils, and fire from his mouth was devouring. Coals burned from it. These are the volcanoes we spoke of, like the Yellowstone Super Volcano, and we will get to what has happened this week in just a second. He also bowed the heavens down and came down with thick darkness under his feet. He rode on a cherub. That's very interesting. And flew, and he sped on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his hiding place, his canopy around him, darkness of waters, thick clouds. This is the return of Jesus at this very moment, in the midst of these thick, dark clouds. From the brightness before him, past his thick clouds, hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the Most High uttered his voice. Hailstones and coals of fire. He sent out his arrows and scattered them, and lightning flashes in abundance and routed them. Then the channels of water appeared. There is a massive storm on the earth, hail and torrents of water combined with the falling of these superheated spheroids we spoke of before. And Jesus is coming back in the midst of all these things. That is the day of the Lord. And then just what we have always dreamed of happens. We are saved at exactly that moment. Wait till you see what Psalm 18 has to say next. He sent from on high, and he took me. He drew me out of many waters. He saved me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. That's the rapture, folks, right after the sixth seal. In the midst of this terror coming on the earth, Jesus saves his own. So now we know how all this fits together scripturally. let's look at the evidence that is right beneath our feet in Yellowstone Park. The most recent news is that this week a surge of magma or molten lava was detected coming into the Yellowstone system. UNAVCO.org, who are made up of scientists, educators, professionals, released a spectrogram which showed this surge of magma. The red shows the heat of the magma. Where this flow happened was in the region where the 125 earthquakes hit Yellowstone 1 week back in September 2020. This surge of magma is having an impact. University of Utah's Robert Smith said that he noticed a change in the water levels at Yellowstone Lake caused by this surge of molten lava. This very large lake appears to be tilting because the lake level was, quote, rising at one end and, quote, falling at the other. In 2019, researchers said a piece of molten rock the size of 2 football fields is rising directly beneath Yellowstone Park. The researchers said, we have discovered that Yellowstone's magma chamber is slowly rising each year. The danger will be if the plumes start liquefying and moving up faster. Typically, when these eruptions begin, they begin from a certain event. Then they get larger as they move along the fracture system until the entire sequence that formed the last Yellowstone eruption, which was thousands of years ago, happens. It may have taken as little as 2 weeks. We are presenting this type of information not to scare Christians, but to show you that the return of the Lord and the rapture could happen within our lifetime and within a few years, really. In this previous video, we showed that the super asteroid Apophis will make a near-Earth pass in 2029. Some scientists secretly say it will hit the Earth. Is this the event that could cause the earthquake that triggers the super volcanoes to erupt? Could the day of the Lord be that close? So we are not to be scared, but we are to look up for our redemption, for the return of our King, because Jesus will come in the midst of exactly these type of events. We are not to be scared, but are to look up for our redemption, for the return of our King. And if this is truly something that will happen not only in our lifetimes, but maybe within the next few years, shouldn't we be living in a manner worthy of the return of our Savior? That is why we produce these videos. If you want to also see the video on the asteroid Apophis that we just spoke of, click right here to watch it now, because it's one thing to believe Jesus is coming and another to know how to be ready for him. Till then, this is Nelson, and we'll see you there.